Welcome, everybody. I'm Jerry Rivera Wilson. I'm with the School of Education and in particular Atlas, the Academy for Advancement of Teaching Leadership in Schools. And I'm happy to share with you that today on edTrends, we are going to be talking about restorative reading and writing with Dr. Stephanie Affinito. And to do a warm greeting from the School of Education at the University of Albany, Dr. Cheryl Dozier, the Associate Professor and Associate Dean with the Department of Literacy, Teaching, and Learning here at the School of Education. Cheryl.
Thank you, Jerry. So it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. Stephanie Affinito this afternoon. Stephanie has been a full-time clinical teaching faculty member in the Department of Literacy, Teaching, and Learning for almost 2 decades. And prior to her time at the University at Albany, Stephanie taught in elementary schools as a classroom teacher and a reading specialist. So within the literacy department, Stephanie teaches both online and on-campus courses. And in 2021, Stephanie received a University at Albany President's Award for Excellence in Teaching because her teaching is so extraordinary, so yay. So always, Stephanie shares her appreciation for literacy coaching, her support for teachers as lifelong learners, as readers and writers. She is the author of 2 books with Heinemann, Literacy Coaching, Teaching and Learning with Digital Tools and Technology, and Leading Literate Lives, Habits and Mindsets for Reimagining Classroom Practice. Stephanie leads book studies, routinely presents for a number of New York State reading councils, and has an active and engaged social media presence. Stephanie presents at state and national conferences on literacy coaching, teacher collaboration, and supporting teachers' reading, writing, and learning through innovative technologies. Stephanie, we are delighted you are with us this afternoon, and everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Stephanie Affinito.
That was such a wonderful introduction, Cheryl. Thank you for that. How did 2 decades go by? I'm just going to share my screen now. We will trade off. Here we go. Everybody see that okay? Okay, perfect. So thank you everyone for coming to my session today. I'm so grateful to have the chance to talk to you about something that is so near and dear to my heart in the work that I do. And I know this is a busy time. It's a busy time of the semester, a busy time of the school year. So thank you for coming, and hopefully you'll walk away feeling really good about the work we do and some ideas to take with you to make it even better for yourself and for your students. So to begin, I feel like I have to start at the beginning to give you a little bit of context for this idea that isn't really talked about a lot, which is restorative reading and restorative writing. So like many of you, likely, I have been a reader and a writer for as long as I can remember, right? I was that kid who would rather read than do most anything else. And I can remember vividly the first book that I remember reading, which was John Stone's The Monster at the end of this book. Remember good old Grover. And as I'm talking about my background and my literate life, please feel free to share about yours or books that spoke to you or things that you're resonating with, like, yes, me too, in the chat box. And that book that taught me that reading was truly supposed to be an experience, right? Grover spoke to me. He told me not to turn the pages, and when I did, something happened. And so I learned from a really young age that reading was something to be lived and experienced and truly mattered. And so I was a voracious reader all throughout my childhood. But in my teenage years, I had an illness that took me out for a couple of years. I was out of school. I was in and out of doctor's offices, hospitals, the whole works. And I realized that reading was more than just something I loved to do. I really feel like it saved me during that time. I couldn't really do what most kids did. I didn't have a normal teenage life. And so I read books for company. I read books, and those fictional characters became my friends. I wrote in the pages of my notebook to get what was on my mind and heart off of it onto the page so that I could feel better. And I really do credit reading and writing during that time as kind of getting me through a very difficult time in my life. And it was actually one book I read that led me to an idea, to a concept, to a doctor that actually really helped me physically recover. And so since then, reading and writing, I knew it had to be a part of my life. And so I became a teacher, went from an elementary teacher to a reading specialist, to a literacy coach, to a literacy faculty member here at UAlbany, just spending my entire career trying to support those who help kids learn how to read and write so that they can develop that same love. And I've been doing that, as Cheryl reminded us, for almost 20 years here at the University at Albany. And then COVID hit. And like all of you, COVID was a very difficult time. I think it was especially a difficult time if you were an educator because you were trying to figure out how to have a family, how to have a life and a job and put it online and do it on Zoom and make sure the kids were okay. And I started during COVID getting, unfortunately, some of the things that robbed me of those teenage years were coming back to say hello during that time. The overwork, the overstress, the burnout, it does a number to your immune system. And so I spent a couple of years very recently trying to figure out what was going on with my own health, why this was resurfacing again later. And I went everywhere. I went to so many doctors. I went to different hospitals. I tried everything from acupuncture and Reiki to eating right and supplements. You named it, I did it. And I finally realized that the one thing that saved me as a kid, I could come back to as an adult, right? Reading and writing. And I decided to really lean into why this mattered so much to me, why a particular kind of reading and writing really did make me feel not just mentally better, but physically better. And so since then, I really leaned into the research behind the why. I've spent almost 20 years teaching kids and teachers how kids learn how to read. And now I'm back to, well, why does that matter so much? And what can it really do for us? And I've kind of stumbled upon, if you will, this idea of restorative reading and writing and why it matters so much. So I feel like that was a really long-winded introduction to everyone, but I wanted to give you a little bit of context of how I've arrived at these two terms. So in my work, in my own reading, in my writing, in my own research, there's a shocking amount of goodness that comes just by engaging in the act of reading, right? So if we look at the physical benefits, and I'm not referencing the research studies here. I certainly have it if you would like it. I'm just giving you a little overview. Research shows that when we engage in reading, our physical body responds. Our heart rate slows, our muscles relax. If we do it at night, we can support better sleep as part of a sleep hygiene routine. In some studies, it showed that it can lower stress up to 68%. In some studies, it showed it can actually lengthen the span of your life by up to 2 years with a 20% reduction in mortality. Now, cognitively, as educators, we know that reading can boost vocabulary and knowledge, improve our memory, strengthen our brain, but it can also support creativity. It can boost problem solving, and really exciting research that shows it can prevent age-related cognitive decline. Now let's get to the emotional benefits. Because of these amazing mirror neurons that fire in our brain when we read about particular things, reading has been shown to alleviate depression, boost happiness, increase our ability to empathize, which I think we could probably agree we need more than ever right now. But the exciting part is that reading can actually activate our parasympathetic nervous system, that nervous system that tells us to calm down and relax. Reading can be that signal for that to happen. And depending on what we read and how we read and surround ourselves in the reading company of others, it can actually foster connection too. So what I'd love for you to tell me in the chat box is how many minutes do you think you would have to read in order to start to get these benefits? How many minutes would it take for those physical, cognitive, and emotional benefits to come through? 30, 20, 15. I like how it's getting lower and lower and lower, because what the research shows, Jerry just went even lower. Good job. The research shows that just 6 minutes of reading, 6 minutes, can start to signal these kind of benefits. Now, the more we read, right, the more we benefit. But it shows that just those 6 minutes, we can start to benefit from that. We can all find 6 minutes, right? We can put down the phone, we can get up 6 minutes earlier, we can go to bed 6 minutes later. Just 6 minutes has these physical and mental benefits. And so I was starting to get real research on why reading literally made me feel better as a kid, and again during this time. But then I started asking, well, what about writing? Right? We've got Pam Allen has said in the past that reading is like breathing in and writing is like breathing out. And that is exactly what my life looks like. Lots of reading and writing, breathing in and out. And so I started diving into well, what about writing? There are a host of physical, cognitive, and emotional benefits for writing as well. Physically, lowers our blood pressure, more better sleep. Again, just like reading, if it is especially after a session of night journaling. But what I was really excited about, because of what I was dealing with in my own health, that writing, notebooking, journaling, whatever you want to call it, has actually shown in research studies to improve your liver function. And what I was interested in, improve your immune function. And in fact, people with asthma and rheumatoid arthritis, they improved after doing regular writing periods over time. Now, cognitively, we know it keeps our memory sharp, especially if we are doing the old-fashioned pen to paper kind of writing. It can help us retain knowledge and memory and give us a voice, especially if we are going through something hard. Writing can give us a space to talk it out and feel like the page is listening, right? The page doesn't evaluate or judge, it just lets it be and lets us get it out. And emotionally, we know writing can strengthen our emotional health. It can boost our mood, especially if we are focused on a gratitude practice. The benefits just go up exponentially. It can help us manage anxiety, reduce stress, cope with depression, all the things. Now head back to the chat box for me. How much writing do you think you need to do in order to benefit from this set of benefits? And I'll pull the chat box back up. Right, Laura, you can't stop at 6 minutes. That's the beautiful part. It starts at 6 and then you get hooked in. I see 15 minutes, 15, 5, 12. Oh, hi, Shannon. I just saw you poke in there. 12, 20. So here's the exciting part about the writing research. It only takes between 15 to 20 minutes of a sustained writing practice a couple of times a month, not even every day. A couple of times a month in order to start to get these benefits. Now, again, the more you do, the more we get, but we can start to get these benefits just from a little bit every day. So what I'd love for you to tell me in the chat box again, I love using the chat box. It makes me feel like we're all not on mute and we're a little bit more interactive. Based on what I just said about the reading and writing research, what benefit do you need most right now? Are you in it for those physical benefits? Would you love those cognitive benefits, or do you need that emotional break? I would love to know which benefit you just saw and went, wait, what? Really? Reading? I need that. Reduction in stress, cognitive and emotional, the emotional break. Yeah, we're in a mental health epidemic for both educators, adults, and kids. We've got a loneliness epidemic going on too. And reading and writing, it can be one of the tools to help give us what we need. And I think it's a tool that maybe teachers lean to automatically, but I'll say the rest of the world in the nicest way I can, right? Because I'm talking to educators, they might not realize that reading and writing can be a tool for wellness, right? It's often something we do when we have enough time, when we get our work done, but it's actually an indispensable tool for our physical, mental, and cognitive health. And that's what I've been researching and talking about more. So the question is, How do you do more of it, right? There's only 24 hours in a day. Time is our four-letter word. We have so many things to do in our classrooms. And the book that Cheryl mentioned, I wrote, Leading Literate Lives, starts to get at this. And in there, I talk about a framework on how we can grow a literate identity, both reading and writing, or depending on which one you are focusing on most in the moment. And there's basically three things we need to attend to in order to grow a strong reading and writing life for ourselves and our classrooms. And today I'm primarily talking to you as the educator. It's like that analogy that a lot of us hate, about the put your own oxygen mask on when the plane is going down. What I've noticed over the years is that teachers who have the most joyful, robust reading and writing classrooms, it's often because they are joyful, robust readers and writers themselves. And so I'm speaking to you first as an educator about this practice. And then towards the end, we'll think about how we can bring it into the classroom. But we basically need three things in order to grow readers and writers in ourselves and our students. First, we need habits, right? We have to make choices in our lives so that reading and writing is part of our everyday routine. Once we have those habits down and we are used to picking up a book at least 6 minutes a day, then we need to focus on the kind of reading and writing we want to do. Because we can have all the best habits in place, but if we're not enjoying that work, or if we don't think it matters, then we're not going to do it. And we're going to have kids that don't want to do it either. So a focus on our reading and writing hearts is important. But then we've got to take it a step further and focus on our reading and writing communities. How do we celebrate that reading that we're doing? How do we connect with others so that we build those social networks and those connections, which research also shows is so important to our mental, physical, all of our health. And actually, the Harvard study that just came out not too long ago showed that connections, meaningful connections with others, is the number one predictor of happiness at the end of our lives. So it's not just about reading and writing. Reading and writing can make life just feel so much better in so many ways. Now, so often we think about our reading and writing goals for ourselves and our kids in terms of numbers. How many books do we want to read this year, right? Or if you're on Goodreads, you know that's what you're asked every January. Or what genres do you want to read about? Or what skills and goals do our students have? What I've learned in both my teenage years and now, as I'm navigating this kind of round two, is that reading and writing are actually a means to an end to feel better. And so asking ourselves first as educators about our own reading and writing lives, who do we want to be? How do we want to feel? And what do we want to do? And then thinking about how our reading and writing can actually bring us to how we want to be and feel and do in our own lives. So if you're familiar with Kylene Beers and Bob Probst's book head heart framework, it's kind of similar, right? What's in the book? What's in my head? But what's in my heart? So what? Why am I reading this book? How did it change me? How did it make me feel better? How did it make me look at the world differently? It's that so what piece that when we layer that on top of the benefits that come just from reading 6 minutes a day or writing 15 to 20 minutes a couple of times a month, that's when we remember the power of reading and writing and what it can do. And I've termed this, as you know from the title, restorative reading and restorative writing. So we know if we were to look in the dictionary, something that's restorative is something that serves to restore us in some way, right? Restore us to consciousness, to vigor, to health. If you think of the restorative things in your life, you may have heard of restorative justice, right? Or restorative yoga. I think that's an easy comparison. There's regular yoga, right? Where you're doing some moves and you're breathing heavy and your muscles hurt. But restorative yoga, that's when you're laying on the mat and you've got weighted blankets and you have pillows and it's enjoyable and it's something that is serving your nervous system in a different way. And so I like to think that restorative reading and writing is a particular kind of reading and writing that is meant to soothe our body physically our parasympathetic nervous system, that's meant to help us, I like to say, grow through what we go through. Just make your mind feel better, have it matter to you. And then the third piece, which is have the reading and writing be a means to an end to feel better in your actual life. Right? And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. So just by reading, we can pull those benefits. But by reading in this particular way and layering on the research of what I have found out and been researching, that's when we could take it to a whole new level. Now, I am talking a lot and you're on mute. So by default, we do not have a very interactive session. So if you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to say anything in the chat box, I do have it open. Please put your thoughts there and I'll make sure that we stop as we go. So you might put in there now, just what are you thinking about in this moment? Whether it's the benefits or what restorative reading and writing actually is, how we might think of it. Again, put those in the comments as we go and I'll stop at any time. So this is my little wheel. This has been what I have been studying personally in order to help myself. If something is restorative and it's going to help me heal my nervous system, which needs some healing, I think all of our nervous systems are recovering from a pandemic still need healing. What are the things that I'm learning does that? Well, reading does it, writing does it. But what if we layered on all of these other wellness modalities like yoga, aromatherapy, breath work, connection, certain kinds of rituals? That's where this idea of restorative reading and writing has come from. And the three that I want to talk to you about today, the three that I think can get a practice like this off the ground and can help you think about reading and writing in your classroom differently, are those first three. Reading rituals, and connected to that, some writing rituals. My favorite term, which is a book apothecary, and then inspired action, which connects back to that book head heart framework. So if we think about rituals for a minute. Oh, I just got to move the chat box a little bit. Here we go. So what I have found in my research is that our life is literally ruled by habits, right? 5 to 95% of our life is based on habit. And you can put in the chat box what you think your percentage is, but I am a creature of habit for sure. I sit in the same place, I drink my coffee out of the same mug, I brush my teeth in the same way, and I take the same route to work, right? It is very, very habitual. Those habits can turn into rituals very quickly, and those rituals can act as very quick signals to our parasympathetic nervous system to calm down. That signal is so important, and I'll talk about that. But we know in the classroom, the routine and the ritual is everything. It helps kids settle in. Beyond that, it's what do I read and write, right? If we read particular things, we can make reading and writing even more restorative than just picking up a book that doesn't matter quite as much. So thinking about the kinds of books we read and have in the classroom, the kinds of writing we do and the prompts we offer to students can help make reading and writing be a very personal act. And then the third thing I want to talk about, if I can get that up there, is the action, the so what, micro actions sparked from the books to enhance our well-being, right? It's helping kids, it's helping us see the why behind why we're reading these books, because it's actually something that's applying to my real life, right? My kids just asked me the other day, I have high schoolers, why do I need how to do that math equation? I don't have a good answer for them, but I know why they can read books. So it's thinking about how does this matter to me? And so in rituals, we want to shift when we think about the reading routines. And I'd love for you to think about the reading routines you have for your own life and the reading routines that you have in the classroom. How do students know that it's time to read? Is it a schedule on the board? Is it a bell that you ring? Is it a certain chant or a clap of your hands? Those rituals matter. And what research shows is that when we have a routine and we change a routine to a ritual, which simply means we just assign some sort of meaningful pairing to that routine, it is a stronger signal to your parasympathetic nervous system that it's time to relax. and decompress and calm down, which is what we want reading and writing to do for students. And so the number one way to turn a habit or a routine into a ritual is to use our five senses. Right? If you ask any therapist what some of the easiest grounding techniques are, what some of the best ways in order to help ourselves and our students calm down, get out of our own head, stop overthinking or ruminating, it's to focus on the senses and the presence around us. You may have heard of the 3-2-1 protocol, which is when you're in a moment of anxiety, just look up. 3 things you see, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you touch, or a variation of that. I have found that layering on those rituals in my own practice and then digging into the research of why that matters, it makes reading a more relaxing experience. And so I'd love for you to think about, in a way that's unique to you, what is one way that you might enhance your own personal reading or writing experience? And then also how you might do that in the classroom, right? So things like, could you pair it with snack time, right? Do you drink your favorite cup of coffee or tea when you read? Do you put an essential oil on? Do you light a candle? Do you go sit in that same comfy chair because it's just that sense of touch that makes you feel like it's time to relax? Do you put on an ASMR room, which are those really cool rooms on YouTube that will show, a fireplace crackling in a bookstore, and we'll have all the background noises of that? Those signals matter. Research shows they matter and helping us settle into the experience. And so the questions I've been asking are, how do we let ourselves do that in our own reading lives? And do we have these kinds of signals for our classroom? Are there things that we could do to help reading and writing be a more enjoyable, relaxing time for students? And just like we know routines are essential to get them into the routine so they don't waste that time just settling in, done over time, it shows that these rituals are really great signals to the nervous system to just settle in. So tell me in the chat box, what's one thing you like to do in your own reading life, your own personal educator reading life, to enhance your reading experience? Mine is a candle. I love lighting a candle that smells really good for whatever season we're in. I didn't realize the research behind why that matters. Now we do. A cup of tea, a big endless cup of tea. Mine is coffee. Curl up on the couch. You may have a certain spot that you like to read in, right? And so those questions matter. Do we let students pick a comfy spot of where they like to read? Do they get to have input into what the background noise of the classroom is? Do they get to change their location in order to see things differently? Do we get to have smells or snack times with reading and writing? So it's just rethinking some of those little things that can make reading and writing a more enjoyable and therefore more restorative experience. Now, let's see. There we go. The next part, right? Once we get into that habit, we have these really wonderful signals that help us calm down and really benefit from reading. It's time to think about what we're reading. Now, I mentioned that it was 6 minutes of reading that could get us to those benefits. Here is one of the most, I think it's such an exciting research study that came out. It showed that if we keep going past 6 minutes, and if we get to 30 minutes of sustained reading in one sitting, 30 minutes of reading has the very same identical impact on your parasympathetic nervous system as 30 minutes of yoga. Same thing. 30 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of yoga. Now, maybe not the same on your leg muscles, but on your parasympathetic nervous system, same thing. So obviously we want to stretch from those 6 minutes to getting up to 30 minutes. And so when we read in these longer sessions, we need books, right? We need books that kids can read, but also that they want to read and that maybe they could or should read because they have a certain purpose for doing so. And so I call it my book apothecary. I've always been obsessed with apothecary tables and drawers and all sorts of things. And so a book apothecary is basically just a collection of books, or if you're thinking about a notebook apothecary, a collection of journal prompts that are chosen especially for you, right? To help you grow through what you're going through, to help you find an interest or a topic that you want to learn about, so that your reading and writing life feels really good. Reading about things that you want to learn about, right? And we know that if we're doing something that we care about or that we at least understand the purpose for, we'll do it more often and we'll do it with more gusto. And so thinking about the books in your own life and our books in the classroom that we'll get to, I want you to think back to that question I asked you, which is, what can reading and writing do for you? Who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? What do you want to do? And we can look at our answers to those questions and help ourselves and our students choose books and particularly genres based on that. So thinking about who do we want to be? Who do our students want to be? Well, we can help them choose fiction titles where those characters will act as mentors for that kind of being, or as partners, as someone who is also working on that particular goal. Reading memoirs or biographies or autobiographies of people who share the same interests as you can help you feel connected. Even though they're fictional, it can boost that feeling of connection and reduce that feeling of isolation and loneliness. If we think about how we want to feel, we can help ourselves and our kids choose particular books to feel that way, right? Think about your, books that just make you feel good, feel happy, feel inspiring. It could be motivational books. It could be poetry. And then what do you want to do? What about books that can help you figure out a new hobby, learn something new that you want to explore? That's where we can help them move into fiction and nonfiction titles. So as I mentioned, so much of my career has been teaching kids the how, and that I'm really enjoying at this point in time to help them think about the why so that they can feel better in the process. And so I want to give you a couple of examples and hopefully build your TBR for yourself as we're going. So this is a book apothecary for anxiety, right? If you have anxiety or working through anxiety, here are some of the titles that I have read and put together. We've got Gretchen Rubin's The Happiness Project. Dear Evan Hansen was a novel, now a major motion picture. You Go First by Erin and Trotta Kelly. Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Separation anxiety is a wonderful one. Yes, she literally wears her dog as a anxiety tool by Laura Zigman. Guts by Raina, I always say her name wrong, Telgemeier, a graphic novel about a young character with anxiety. My all-time favorite book, Present Over Perfect by Shauna Niequist. And Sidetracked by Diana Harmon Asher. So a collection of books that if you are working through anxiety and you want mentors and peers and you want to feel less alone, we can help students and ourselves choose books so that they are moving in the direction they want to go in. And that makes reading and writing feel good and feel better and feel intentional. And they can get behind it, which means they'll likely do more of it. Now, what about creativity? What if you want to boost your creativity in this period of your life? Little Brown is a wonderful picture book. I love picture books by Marla Frazee. Love Lettering by Kate Claiborne. Little rom-com, but just has so much creativity if you like hand lettering, which seems to be all over social media right now. A good old classic, Liz Gilbert's Big Magic, which is a wonderful seminal kind of text for that work. Collection of poetry by Kate Baer, What Kind of Woman? To All the Boys I've Loved Before, if we want some YA, by Jenny Han. Craft a Life You Love by Amy Tangerine. 5 Feet Apart, which is also turned into a movie. And one of the classic picture books, What Would You Do with an Idea? So the idea of restorative reading is that, yes, you can read to get those benefits, but what you read matters. I don't know if you know the quote by Jim Rohn. It's this wonderful yet scary quote that says, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." Hey, think about that for a minute. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. What if you were the average of the 5 books you read? Right? What would that say about you? What would that say about us? What if your book stack could talk? Is what I like to ask kids. What would it say about you? What kind of person are you? What kind of reader are you? What kind of person or reader do you want to be? Those choices matter. Now, if you are exploring anti-racism, right, we've got a lot of books. Punching the Air, Stella by Starlight. I love anything Sharon Draper has ever written. My Name Is Not Refugee, All American Boys. We read that as part of our children's literature class. The Black Friend, Being a Better White Person. Britt Bennett's amazing novel, The Vanishing Half. I threw in another Sharon Draper for blended. My Poppy Has a Motorcycle. So again, just collections of books to help us grow into the person we want to be. And I've got one more because it's often when I ask people what kinds of books they want to read, a lot of people want to read just to escape reality. And books can let us do that without ever leaving our living room. So books like The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which is an epistolary novel completely written in letters. A History of the World in 7 Glasses. Jenny Colgan. Oh, just my favorite uplit author, like uplifting literature. The Loveliest Chocolate Shop in Paris. You'll get whisked away to Paris. Pilgrim at Tinker Creek by Annie Dillard. We've got The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake, which is a book about a character who can feel what people are feeling when she tastes the food that they make her. So very interesting kind of fantasy text. We could go old school fun where the wild things are and have ourselves a wild rumpus. We can read John Connolly's The Book of Lost Things, where the books literally come to life. And The Traveling Cat Chronicles, which is about a cat who travels its way through books. So many possibilities by putting together a stack of books that is perfect for you. So tell me in the chat box, what's a title you've read lately? What's a title you could recommend to us? Doesn't have to be on a certain topic, just for people who want to build their stacks. I would love if you could put those in the chat box and then I could steal some of them myself as well. Ooh, I hadn't known that one, Jerry. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Oh my goodness, that is a good one. Again, another one we could liken to books. Show me the books you're reading and I'll show you your future. So you can go ahead. Oh, The Body Keeps the Score is such a good one. And put in some titles in the chat box. And I'm going to keep going because I just looked at the time. But here's what we know from Scholastic. If we're going to help kids with their reading life in ways that matter to them and make them feel really good, which is what restorative reading and writing is all about, then we need books. And we need a lot of books. This is from Scholastic that says each classroom library should have a minimum of 750 books in good condition, right? With a minimum of 30 books per student, where we've got quality and the content just as much as the quantity and the readability, right? So that they are books that students want to read and they feel really good about reading. I know it's a tall order, but the more books, the more opportunities for students to be able to lose themselves in them. Now, what about writing? I told you that when we layer on the research from writing, even more good things happen. And research shows that when we write in response to our reading, we can have a very similar benefit that can happen as if we were in therapy. Like, it's called bibliotherapy, and this kind of writing is called literary journaling. Bijal Shah is someone that is kind of leading the way in this. She just had a book published that's titled Bibliotherapy, and she talks about literary journaling as being a method to work through feelings, work through emotions in a bounded, structured therapy session with a therapist, actually using narrative therapy, but that we can do that same thing at home of just enhancing our reading through writing. Not constructed responses, 2 or 4 point questions, not, writing from sources, but the kind of writing that offers us an opportunity to explore what we're feeling as we're reading. How does this book make you feel? What words were compelling? What quotes are jumping out at you? Some research that shows paying attention to those quotes and then writing those quotes down, old-fashioned pencil to paper, matters and can actually spark some emotional release on the page. And so thinking about what those quotes are, what's tugging on your mind, what's tugging at your heart, why are you stopping at certain points that you are? Why are you getting out your highlighter, your sticky note, or your book dart, whatever you happen to use? What lessons might be in the pages for you based on what you're going through or what you wanted to get out of your reading? These are some of my favorite quotes that I have read recently that I just want to share. I have a whole notebook of them. This is a good one. If you need a book to read, go read anything by Rachel Linden. If you just want to feel good about life. This is one of my favorites. Correct what you can and bear the rest with honesty and courage. That's from Recipe for a Charmed Life. We've also got this one. This is from Amazing Grace Adams by Fran Littlewood, about a woman kind of going through a midlife thing. I know you feel like no one here sees you. I'm telling you, I see you. Right? They're fictional characters, but they feel like friends. And then this one is from a recent book of children's literature that I just love. It's a series, Rica Baptista. Oh my goodness, it's wonderful, by Jana Costa Bates. And the character says in the book, "Who knew you could be brave just by deciding to be?" Right? So there are these little nuggets, these little quotes that jump out to us and speak to us for different reasons. And we want to pay attention to those reasons. We can do that in our own reading life as educators. But when we think about that with our students, it's still writing from a source. It's still getting text evidence, but it's text evidence for ourselves and for what we're feeling. So we're still practicing those skills and standards, but in a different way. And so research shows the best way to get this kind of quote literary journaling benefit is to open up a page, take one of those quotes that have spoke to you and write it at the top. Old fashioned, if we can, pen to paper. Write the quote at the top, right? The research shows us that if we do that writing of the quote, it's helping us to embody the quote. So we write it at the top of the page and then we just write. Why did I pick this out? Why did this jump out at me? Why did I feel the need to highlight it? What's it making me think about? How do I feel? Whatever comes to mind, you write from. And then before you're done writing, you challenge yourself to think of an actionable step you could take from that quote. So if that quote about being brave jumped out at me, I could write that quote at the top. I could write about it. And then maybe I end with one little small step I could do to be brave in my own life. Now, if that's too nebulous, if that's too general, here are 3 sentence starters. Now, these are mainly for adults. We could move them to be kid-friendly, but we could write the quote at the top and say, I think this quote resonated with me because, fill in the blank. Here's what this quote needs me to know, fill in the blank. And I'm ready to receive this quote because. So those 3 things are more structured that might lead you to some sort of actionable step from the book, which means the reading mattered. Again, adult friendly, but we could easily turn them into kid friendly terms depending on your age group. But I want to make sure that you know that writing has its benefits outside of reading as well. When we layer it on reading in that way that is emotionally compelling, we get all of those benefits. But there is so much research that simply by writing and writing things in a way that matter to us personally, that matters without reading. So I just put a couple of spring prompts up there that are really great for adults to consider. Not so much kids, but again, I'm after your own reading life right now. And you could have anchor structures for your notebooks or specific prompts based on the season. I'm a list maker. I love just making lists in my notebooks. April is National Letter Writing Month, if you did not know. And so you could write letters to yourself, to your younger self, your future self, or actually write real letters to people and send them out. so much research on the power of sending old-fashioned note cards for both the writer and the receiver. And then affirmations, just writing affirmations, research has shown that to be a very powerful piece of writing as well. So I want to show you the last thing, which is kind of that so what? What do we want to be? How do we want to feel? What do we want to do? Books can act as triggers, right? What we do after we read the last page of a book is just as important as the kind of reading and thinking and engagement as we do inside of it. And if we want to use reading and writing as this restorative practice, then we need to have our reading and writing spark something in our actual life to make it better. And those just have to be little teeny tiny micro actions, right? And so I want to give you an example. This was a book I read, The Magic of Lemon Drop Pie. It's that author I told you, Rachel Linden. If you need a feel-good author, go read anything she has written. Here are some of the things I did as a result of reading this book during that very trying part of my life. First, I have a new life motto. It's on sticky notes everywhere I go because it was in the book with the character. Stay present, be honest, seek joy, right? Pretty good motto. I actually attempted, and not just attempt, it worked. I made my own gluten-free, because I'm gluten-free lemon meringue pie using the recipe that the character did in the book. It was delicious. My family may not have agreed with, the gluten-free part, but it was still great. In the story, the character does have a journaling practice, and she puts her dreams into action. I did a lot of writing about what those dreams might be for me, and I imagined different alternatives for them. This book taught me that if you just put a magical lemon candy in your mouth, you'll have a dream that night of what your life would have been if you took different choices. I don't have a magical lemon drop, but I do have a notebook where I imagined, what if I did this? What would happen? What if I did that? What would happen? And I actually reached out to the author because it had such an powerful impact on me. And she sent me another recipe. And then I had another good dessert with family, right? Micro actions of just doing something related to the book. It made me feel really good. It made me feel better. Here's another one. Love, love, love this book. And this is a smaller press author, so not as many people know about her. This is This Time Could Be Different by Kristen Wireman. I can't believe some of the things I did as a result of this book. Number one, I actually made my own personal audio meditation that is on my phone when I find myself anxious. That was from this book. There is a therapist in this book who was in my review of the book, I said she was a magical fairy god therapist. And she walks this character through a meditation that calms her down. I literally opened up my phone and read this therapist's words from the book, and it calmed me down. It's on my phone, and I still play it, even though it's been a couple of months since I read the book. The character decided that she was going to try to make a homemade facial cream. I did it. I went on Amazon. I got the stuff. I made it. It doesn't work that great, but it was a lot of fun. I reached out to a friend I haven't seen in a while and reconnected with them. Just like in this book, the character does some things that are a little hard to move her closer to a dream. And that's exactly what I did. I started talking about this restorative reading and writing that I was doing because of this book, because of the character's bravery. I actually reached out to this author as well. I got to have an hour-long conversation with her about life and then started reading all of her backlist books. So again, reading can just lead you to things that make you feel really good. Now I'm going to end with this video. Tell me in the chat box, do you know this book, Circles All Around Us by Brad Montague? Brad Montague is the creator of Kid President. You might know Kid President, those really wonderful videos. I'm just going to make sure my sound is shared because I thought it would be very fitting to end with a book. And I want you to think about the purpose of reading, right? I've talked all about this restorative reading, and I think this book really pulls it together. So I'll push play and make it larger, and let me know with some hand signals in the Zoom if you need it a bit louder.
Soothes by Brad Montague. We begin by drawing the circle on the ground. Land eats you. safe little settle for just one person. Nobody in the settle but you. As time passes, our eyes open. We see others we really care for. So that's when we ask ourselves, so what's this circle really there for? If the circles all around us, everywhere that we all go, there's a difference we can make, and a love we can all show. The circle doesn't have one person. The circle for just you, yourself. But that would be like a library with just one book on the shelf. So now draw a bigger circle where friends and family can share. Now you see what all can happen in a circle full of tears. But standing in the circle with you and your loved ones now all in it, what about all the other people? All the ones that you couldn't fit. So you stretch and get the pencil out and draw the circle a bit more wide and let a few more people know they're welcome now inside. And the circles all around us, everywhere we all go, there's a difference we can make and love we can all show. Doesn't mean the circle's easy. It's a bit harder the more you see. But wonderful things can happen when love is known and felt everywhere. But there's still so many persons outside the circle. They're different all they do. The feeling is little and tough, but for a bigger circle, what have to do? So let's create bigger circles all around us for the rest of our days. Let our caring ripple out in a million little ways. In the circles all around us, everywhere that we all go, there's a difference we can make and a love we can all show. As our circles all get wider and they shift on every side. Never forget where the love came from. You first found there inside.
That book gets me every time. I don't know if it's the kid voice, but it is a beautiful picture book. And I think it captures exactly, what our purpose is. Life is about building bigger circles, and teaching is about drawing bigger circles for students. And reading and writing give us the opportunity to draw bigger circles in ways that we might not be able to do in real life. Right? I will never know what it's like to grow up in a different country, to be a different gender, to have a different background, but I can by experiencing it in a book. I can develop that empathy. I can understand. My circles can grow bigger just by reading, just by writing about that reading and thinking about how it matters, and therefore what I do differently because of the kind of person that I have become through the books that I read. And I think that this book just captures that perfectly. So we have 5 minutes left. I feel like I spoke way too quickly, but I got it all in. And I would love for you to just head to the chat box. You can put in, do you have a question? Do you have a comment? We can talk about any of those things that are on the screen. Book recommendations. I would love to know what you're thinking, even though we only have a couple of minutes left to do it. And then I'll share some ways that we could keep connecting. I'm glad you like the books. I see the hearts coming in. Yeah, it is one of my favorites. So again, I'm hoping that you first put your own oxygen mask on, right? And give yourself this gift, right? Taking 30 minutes to read a couple of times a week. It isn't a selfish thing. It's not a hobby thing. It's literally important to your wellness and your health and well-being. And then thinking about how we might do that for our students to make reading and writing something that just feels really good and that can make life better. Oh, I love that. Thinking about inspired action, personal connection, handwritten letter to the author. Yeah, if there's anything I've learned is that authors, they are so willing to talk to us and to find us on social media. Obviously, students can't, but we could be that conduit through it. They love hearing about how those books impacted us. So I'm going to just go to the last slide, which is all the ways that we might keep the conversation going. If you go to my website, which is alitlife.com, it is basically me just talking about all of this all the time. I have podcast episodes with authors about making your reading and writing life better and more meaningful. I actually have a podcast called Kid Lit Love, where I talk to a different children's literature author every week on how their books can help make kids' lives better. And then on just about all the social platforms, not as active on all of them, but you can find me at Affinito Lit on just about all of those as well.